Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2026 Senate map, and I will be giving you my prediction for the month of January in 2025. So let's get into it. Let's start off with the safe Democrat and Republican states. Now, safe states are states that are going to be won by either party by more than 12 points. So let's start off with the Democrats. The Democrat safe states are Oregon, Colorado, Illinois, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Delaware. So those are going to be all of the Democrats' safe states, putting their safe seats at 40. Now we're going to go to Republicans' safe seats. We have Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Wyoming, putting Republican safe states at 49. So as you see, Republicans would only need to win one of all of these seats to win a majority in the Senate, with J.D. Vance's tie-breaking vote. Now let's go to the likely states. So let's start off with the Republicans. I believe that Alaska is going to be a likely state for the Republicans. Now, looking back at the 2020 election, we see that Dan Sullivan won by about 12 points, and Trump did not do that well in Alaska in 2020. So I think because it might be a blue wave environment, I think that he's still going to win by a pretty comfortable margin, but I think it's going to dip just below 12 points, and that's why I'm going to have that as a likely margin. My next likely margin that I'm going to have is the state of Maine. Now, Maine, on the presidential level, is a pretty Democrat state. It voted for Harris by 7 points in this election, and it's voted in the congressional level for Democrats. But when Susan Collins is on the ballot, it's a different story. Susan Collins in the 2020 election faced scrutiny for voting for Brett Kavanaugh, a very controversial Supreme Court justice, and the polls coming into this election showed her down. But at the end of the day, she ended up winning by almost 9 points. Now, I do have to say this election was before Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I'm sure that the voters of Maine are not going to like that because Collins did vote for actually two of the three Supreme Court justices that Trump appointed, and they all voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. But I still do think that Collins is going to end up winning by a likely margin just because she's a pretty popular Maine senator, and that's why I have this in the likely margin. Now we're going to go to the state of Ohio. Now, Ohio would not usually be on the map, but there is a special election to be filling J.D. Vance's seat. Now, Ohio, this election, Bernie Moreno unseated Sherrod Brown, the Democrat incumbent. Now, Sherrod Brown was a very popular incumbent from Ohio. He had been serving there for a long time, but the reason why Sherrod Brown went down is because Trump did so well in Ohio, and so that's why he went down. Now, the only scenario that I really see Ohio getting competitive is if Sherrod Brown decides to run again. If he decides to run again, I think it could probably make it a lean margin, but for right now, I'm going to put this in the likely margin. I see the Republican candidate probably winning by like 8 to 10 points as of right now. Now we're going to go to the Democrat likely states. So let's start off with the state of New Mexico. Now, Lujan is going to be the incumbent. Lujan won by about 6 points. And this was a very underwhelming victory, considering that Biden won New Mexico by 11 points. So Lujan is definitely not the most popular incumbent in New Mexico. That could be challenging, but I do still think that because of the environment that Lujan is going to be up for re-election, I do believe New Mexico is going to be a likely state for the Democrats. Another likely state that I have is the state of New Jersey. Now, back in 2020, Cory Booker won by about 16 points, which is about how much Biden won the state by. But New Jersey has taken a shift to the right, and you see that Phil Murphy only won re-election, the governor, Phil Murphy, by 3 points. And then, in the 2020 election, Donald Trump only lost the state by 6 points. And so this is really not good news for Democrats in New Jersey. I still do believe that Cory Booker will win another re-election. I don't think he's going to win it by a safe margin, probably a likely margin because of the environment that we're in. But I would say to keep your eye on New Jersey because it is trending to the right. And a big indicator on how New Jersey is going to vote is this governor election coming up in November this year. So that's another likely state for the Democrats. Now let's look at New Hampshire. So Jeanne Shaheen is up for re-election, and she's a pretty popular incumbent. She won by 15 points in New Hampshire, even though Biden only won the state by 7 points in 2020. And she has been more of a bipartisan senator. She did vote for the Laken Riley Act, which a lot of Democrats did not vote for. And so, this could, she could win this by a safe margin, but the reason I think I'm going to put this in the likely margin right now is because Scott Brown might run for Senate again. Now, if you don't know who Scott Brown is, he actually he ran against Jeanne Shaheen in 2014, and he almost won that race. And he also, I'm pretty sure, served as a senator from Massachusetts. I might not be right on that one, but he is a really good candidate for the Republicans. And honestly, if he did get funding, I could see this race maybe going to a lean margin or maybe possibly a tilt margin. He is a really good candidate. But for right now, because Jeanne Shaheen is pretty popular, I'm going to put this in the likely margin. Another likely state that I have is Minnesota. Now, Minnesota, you see Smith. Smith only won re-election by 5 points in 2020. He actually did worse than what Biden did in Minnesota. And so this could be a problem for Democrats. If he is not a good incumbent, if people in Minnesota don't like him, he could really not do that well. But I still do think that because of the environment that they're in, the blue wave environment, I see Minnesota being a likely margin as of right now. And then I have one last state as a likely margin. That's going to be Virginia. So Mark Warner won by 12 points against Gade in 2020. He actually outperformed Biden by 2 points. This was when Biden won Virginia by 10 points. And a lot of stuff has happened since then. In 2021, Virginia elected a Republican governor. And in 2024, Harris only won the state by 5 points. So you could say Virginia has taken a shift to the right since then. And even though it's going to be a pretty good environment for Mark Warner, I think he's going to win re-election. I don't think it's going to be by a safe margin. That's why I have it as a likely margin as of right now. So that finishes it with our likely margins. Now let's go to the tilt margins. Let's start out with the state of North Carolina. Now, as you see, North Carolina back in 2020 voted for Thom Tillis by about 1.8%. And this was a surprise. A lot of people thought that Thom Tillis was going to go down this election cycle. A lot of polls had Cunningham up, but he ended up pulling it out. A lot of that had to do with Trump winning North Carolina. But Thom Tillis is not the most favorable incumbent. A lot of North Carolinians don't like him. I'm pretty sure he actually has an unfavorable rating in North Carolina. And the reason I could see this becoming really, really competitive is because Roy Cooper might run in 2026. And for those who don't know who Roy Cooper was, Roy Cooper was the governor of North Carolina. And he won by 4.5%. But he was actually expected to win by a lot more than that. Some polls had him up by 14 points. And so it was kind of surprising that he only won by 4.5%. So a lot of Democrats are counting on him maybe running in 2026. I do believe that if he ran, he could make it really competitive. But then also you're reminded that North Carolina does vote for a lot of Democrats up and down the ballot, but usually not at the federal level. They might vote for a Democrat governor and a Republican senator, as you saw that they did in 2020. They voted for Roy Cooper and also Tom Tillis and Donald Trump. And so what a lot of people don't know is the federal level and the statewide level are two different things. Very, very two different. People might vote for Democrats on the statewide level and Republicans on the federal level and vice versa. So I do believe that Tom Tillis, if he runs again, probably will win. It's going to be really, really close. I think he's going to win by a tilt margin. He also might be primary. We're going to have to see, but I'm going to put this as a tilt margin as of right now. And then we have the state of Georgia. So Georgia, Brian Kemp might run for this seat. This seat was actually is actually held by Jon Ossoff, and he really surprised a lot of people by unseating Perdue. Now Perdue was a pretty popular incumbent, but he actually went down to Jon Ossoff. And this was the two special elections that ended up happening, or runoffs, I should say. And Jon Ossoff has been more of a bipartisan senator. He did vote for the Lincoln Riley Act. But I think that Brian Kemp, if he runs, I think he might be able to pull off an upset against Jon Ossoff, because you see, he won his governor election by 7.5 points. That's more than Roy Cooper won. And so, yes, I did say that the statewide and federal levels are two different things. But when you see a governor this popular in a swing state being able to win by this margin, I do think that he might be able to pull off an upset and win against Jon Ossoff by a tilt margin. And then we have one last state to look at, the state of Michigan. So Michigan, we have Gary Peters as the incumbent. He actually underperformed Biden in the 2020 election by about 60,000 votes. And he's not the most favorable incumbent. People don't like him as much. Big parts to do was John James was a good challenger to him. And John James did pretty well, considering that Trump lost by more than John James did. John James won Macomb County by about 5 points. But then in 2024, you see Donald Trump winning Macomb County by 13 points. And so I believe that if you see a good candidate winning Michigan, running in Michigan for the Republicans, you might be able to see an upset, but of course it is a very Democrat environment. And also, Michigan has shifted to the right in the past 4 years. It went from voting for Biden by 2 points to voting for Trump by 1.5 points. And so when you see that kind of swing in a state, you could definitely see an upset, but because it's going to be a more blue favoring year, I do see Michigan going in as a tilt margin for Gary Peters and the Democrats. So this is my prediction. I believe that Republicans are going to get 54 seats as of right now to Democrats 46. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button down below and subscribe. Comment your thoughts or suggestions in the comment section down below. Shout out to Diana Barbie, our first channel member. If you would like to become a member, you can join near my channel logo. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.